Olga is one of our living legends, has been doing a lot of amazing work, and I feel like this is going to be really, really an amazing conversation. So I'm really, really delighted that Olga is joining us here tonight. And please clap it up for Denice, who is coming on stage now.
Te lo mereces todo. Oh my God. No se vale, que tenga que hablar después de tu gran show. So it's thank you. Thank you for doing the work to gather the stories that need to be told. It's been a mix of emotions to see the various lives that you have brought to life, and I feel like I've gone through really all of those various, its stages, something that really moved me when one of the characters saw a photograph of an old lesbian, as I am, and they said, "Oh, I can grow old." Well, you can grow old too, because you can see me. Okay, so there are many threads that I could go on. One is that I thought, especially with our audience here, I see intergenerational folks, some folks that I know that are close to my age, and children of my friends, and many faces that, I can more or less guess like what generation you might be. So the part about the coming out, and there were different ways that people came out. Sometimes I think that it's an ongoing process. And I wanted to ask you, some of it comes across, and especially with your mother, which is then the other thread that I want to follow. No podemos tocar todos los hilos. I mean, we could, yeah, pero tenemos que ir a emborracharnos primero, ¿verdad? No, we don't need to do that. I'm aware of the wellness elements too. So, pero how was it for you in terms of like, was there like coming out, retreating, coming out in a different way, and maybe not retreating, but adjusting? So just if you can say a little bit about that. I'm asking you the question, so.
First of all, I want to say it's really an honor to be here with you. You are not only a living legend, but you have made possible so many. You've made me feel more possible. You have made so many other queer Latinas feel possible. And one thing that was really important to me was that this is not a play about ancestors. This is a play about our living elders who are with us, who are writing books, who are sharing their stories, who are part of organizations. And how do we ensure that there's a strong puente entre nosotros so that we can carry on the work and that torch, right? Also, gracias a MACLA and Yosimar. Can we have like one more round of applause? Gracias por tenerme. Y a ustedes, to your question, coming out was like a 6-year thing for me. It's definitely a plural, it's coming outs. There were many versions of them, many stops along the way. And I think something that I noticed in just LGBT storytelling in general was that a lot of the stories fall into 2 buckets. It was like I was loved, and I came out and I was loved. There was no questions. It was fine. And that's a real experience. Or I came out and I was kicked out and we didn't have a conversation and I was disowned, and that's a real experience. But for many of us, and for me, it was very messy. It was just something in between. And so what do you do with a parent? You know, a lot of this play is a mother and daughter trying to learn the language to love each other and unwilling to let go. And that, so what is that wrestling? What is that? And so that's what a lot of it was, you know, for different family members wrestled in different ways. I have by no means the most horrific, worst story. Like, I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky to have the family that I have, to love and accept me. But it doesn't mean that they don't still sometimes have questions, or that there's parts of my identity, particularly my androgyny, my masculinity, that they don't fully understand. So my mom was the first person I came out to, and I was terrified. I was 19. It was also the first time I ever came out in a poem. That's how I came out. I came out in a poem. And that's, the power of poetry that it had in my life to pull me out of the closet, you know? And then I didn't come out to my father until I was 25. It took 6 years, you know? So it took a while. But the great thing about having siblings is that I sent them to tell my other family members. You know this thing where you're supposed to, like, it's my story, I'm supposed to tell my story. I was like, no, you can tell it. You can tell it. I don't need to be, because I was so fragile that I couldn't take anything. I couldn't take even this. If this changed, if I saw some disappointment, I was too fragile. So I knew that about myself. So I was like, sisters.
Pass the word
Hermanas.
on.
I mean, my sister sat me down right before I came out to my mom at a pizza shop in Union Square and was like, so you're gay? And I was like, okay, so what? You know? Yeah. It was a process, though. It was a process.
Thank you for sharing that. And it is the coming outs. I'll share a little bit just to add to that. At one point, I was talking to my brothers, and we had a party, my brother Mario and Eddie, and a joke came up, like a gay joke, you know. And I just said, okay, if you guys ever hear a joke about a dyke, I want you to say that you're very proud of your dyke sister. My brothers just flipped out, like, what? And they sort of like, but they knew, right? They knew. Everybody knows. Everybody always knows. Okay, just to let you know that everybody knows. So they
Probably
knew,
knows.
Everybody knows.
Probably knows. Yeah.
And then one of my brothers said, fine, you can be whatever, but don't bring it around the kids.
Right.
So and I said,
Right.
okay. I said, okay, fine. And I'm very close to my nieces and nephews, and I'm very close to my brothers. And I said, but you tell the kids why I'm not coming around. And, you know, so like, no,
Wow.
and that I was like, I'm glad I did. I wasn't always that brave, but at that moment, I said that. My other brother, the youngest one, started crying. Because he said, so what happened, you know, there's something bad happened to you. And later on, when I've done some talks, and I talk about that in terms of the process of families, right? And I said, no, brother, nothing bad happened to me. Something good happened to me. Yeah. And then he actually rode, and I was honored with a community grand marshal at Pride in San Francisco. My brother and two of his kids rode with me in the car.
Wow.
I think it was because I was a lowrider, okay? That's really why.
That's what did it.
That's the reason. But I think, and that, again, those processes of evolution of our families
Yes.
is also part of the different parts of coming out. I never talked to my mother about being gay. I never talked to her about it. I wish I had. But this is how then things turned out. I kept bringing girlfriends. So, and always very welcome. And one of my partners that I had an 18-year relationship, and we had talked about adopting a baby. We ended up not doing that, but I talked to my mom about it. I said, well, as a Pat and I, And we had our own bedroom. So it's just like, we never talked about it, but we spent a lot of time with him. And I said, well, Pat and I are thinking of adopting a baby. And so it's like, a ver qué decía. So, because those are ways of coming out without saying it.
Right.
And to this day I question, like, well, why didn't I just say it? It was easier to talk around it or to talk about it happening. Pat and I are going to adopt a baby. We're thinking about it. She said, well, tengo una pregunta. So I do have a question. I go, okay. Is the name going to be Talamante Brown or Brown Talamante?
Wow, she knew. So she really knew.
Well, she knew. So the baby's going to have both of our names, And so, so let me go to the part about the mother.
Okay.
Because that also came out in some of the narratives, and you especially with your mom calling you, and that was beautifully brought in to the story because. What do they do with it? This is, and I think, and we worry about it in our own way, rebelling or whatever. And I also say this because some of you may be dealing with this with your mother or with your father or your siblings, and just to put it on the table and to ask ourselves, in some ways, because here we are wrestling. We can't find the words. We don't have role models, or we have el tío que era de así, like our families said, "Ay, pues ya ves cómo es," like, I think I know what that means, but never. So they don't have role models of how to talk about it either, and so. How do we deal with what they have to deal with? Well, we're dealing, rightfully so, with what we have to deal with. So how is that in terms of your mom and you figuring out how she was dealing with things?
I think everybody's situation is different. For me, my mom and I are like very, very close. And I was definitely really afraid because I knew, no matter how many years she's been in this country, I know my mom is always like, she's from the campo, like it's in there. And I definitely think I have to, for many reasons, I'm grateful that she found a spiritual practice that she's really connected to, and that's very healthy for her. And also Buddhism exposed to her to a lot of gay people that hadn't she not been, I don't know if she would have interacted. So she had a reference for gay people in her life. But of course, then it's your daughter. So there's still a moment that's happening. And I think more than who I loved, my mom really struggled with how I dressed. She struggled with how I dressed. She struggled with how I presented myself more than my sexuality. She struggled with my who I was becoming and what that was looking like. And to this day, I think she still has preferences. I think she would prefer me to sort of present in a different way, but I think she just knows this is who I am, and she lets it go. That doesn't mean she understands all of it. And so we are at a point where, my mom, we are recording. Okay, we are recording.
Your mom's gonna hear this.
Oh, Lord.
Mamá, escuche, por favor.
Ay, Dios. She wouldn't care. She'd be like, tell him, dile, my mom didn't want to buy certain articles of clothing for me. And then 2 years ago, she bought me something and she goes, here you go, Nana, pero it's for sleeping, okay? It's for sleeping. It's nice and big, okay? For sleeping. I was like, okay. you know? For Christmas, she'll buy me like a button down, you know, and she makes sure it doesn't have certain things on it. So she tries, she tries. But to your question of how do moms, how do parents, how do families deal with it, I can only say that I understood they needed time. I just couldn't be in their orbit. I couldn't be close. We can't expect our family to not have questions sometimes. We can't expect them to understand all of the pronouns right away. But what I can work with is a willingness to want to learn. I can work with that. And I think we have to, as tender as we may be, depending on where you are in your journey, as tender, you're just stepping into it, you know, versus you're very secure in who you are, you've had the time to process. It's different, but all I can say is try to give yourself the time that you need and allow your family members the time they might need. And then you hopefully will have the moment where you can. You know, the beautiful thing about family is what I think about long-term relationships, you know, and I've never been with somebody for 18 years, but there's an elasticity to our family relationships many times, to intimate relationships many times, where we may go through mini breakups with each other. We may not be connected right now. And the hope is that part of the strength of our love is that that's just right now. And in time, we'll find our way back, you know? That's what I found in myself, you know, in my situation.
I think that's very wise.
But we have to give our parents some space, too.
Yes, that's very wise, and I think I wanted to hear your opinion. You know,
what do you think?
Yeah.
Can I ask questions? Because I don't know what the rules are. What are the rules? Hay reglas.
Well, first to say, I had a long-term relationship with Pat. We broke up, and it was very painful, and we remain good friends. And I have the most wonderful partner in Vola, who I've been with for 17 years. Mm-hmm. See, the good thing about getting old is that you'll have several tries at this, you know, if you need to. Like, if you need to, just keep at it, you know? What can I say?
Listen, I'm following you. Because these apps ain't it. Sorry, what?
No. I like that analogy of, like, with the family, just going back to, like, because it's ongoing.
Yeah.
It is ongoing, and if you get it to a certain place where you can then sort of go forward and now live your life with family, mm-hmm. Fully, mm-hmm. you know. And your mom is buying, you know, the clothes that she does not approve of. Mm-hmm. That's a big step.
It is.
And giving grace to that.
Yes.
You know, and also. And for the times that we have been offended and rejected, you know, that has its place too. All I'm saying is, like, it doesn't erase it, right?
No.
Because it's there, you know, and it's sort of, and it doesn't go away. So I always remember this time, because I used to be more tomboyish. Then I went to my girly phase. Mm-hmm. So now I'm a femmy butch or a butchy femme, okay? So I got my earrings, I got all this. This is I try to do it, right? But I was
love it. I love this. I love this.
So I was pretty tomboyish when I was growing up, and I heard one of my aunts, you know, like I said, that little that side looks just, pues yo creo que a la Olga no le gustan los muchachos. So I think Olga doesn't like boys, and they didn't know that I was close by, that I could hear. But I heard that disdain in that question, right? It wasn't just a regular question, it's that disdain. Yeah. And there was more to it. I knew there was more to it than whether I like boys or not, you know? And so that, it stays with you, you know, and to shake it off, oh man, I still remember it, you know, so kind of like, so I think acknowledging the damage that does, it is damage that it does to us. So we have to repair those in us.
Yeah.
It sort of both continue to happen, damage and repair.
Yeah.
Damage and repair.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I cannot give you any better news than that, but because that's really what the process is. Just in terms of like coming out, the Lyft driver that brought me here, and we were chatting and stuff. We had a good conversation, and he was telling me about his business, and he does these like black tie affairs that look really fancy. And he said, and one's coming up. It's at some hotel. And then he said, so I'm going to give you a ticket, and I'll give you a ticket for you and your husband. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those times, you know, when like, I said, well, you give me one for my wife, you know. And he goes, oh, well, yes, of course, yes, sure, yeah. So he was cool with it. It was more like, but it's like, what I also, I think I resent is the fact that I'm not just, I don't want to share my life with this guy that I'm just like, you know, meeting for a few half hour or so. But it's sort of like, and it's like inside of me is like, don't say anything.
Yeah.
Which a lot of times when I would travel, well, anyway, being in the plane and stuff, people talking about their you know, I don't want to get into it. But this time, lo and behold, I said, well, fuck it. I said, give me one for my wife, you know? So, so the ongoing process. I think we still have some time that I wanted to also comment on the kind of like the political repression and the political persecution, you know, of especially in the times when our community has been, you know, totally present and bold and in your face. I mean, to talk, of course, Stonewall, but there was also reference to la anarquista and all that. And I wanted to just ask you in terms of like like this period of time, in terms of your generation, and how it may apply. How does that get expressed? That kind of like, which is it is repression, you know, of our identity and how we represent, and there's also, and then tying it to today's reality, which is just the horror show that I listen to every morning as I'm going to work, and I have to like just put it aside because otherwise it will just break me, you know? And so, but the it's actual political repression, you know, and sometimes we may see it like, well, it is sexual because of sexuality, but there's also a political statement that we're making by being who we are, that is also threatening, and that it will get repressed, and that it gets repressed. So I wanted to ask you, in terms, you know, your life. We have a few years in between our lives, and so how do you see it? How do you feel it?
I really appreciate that question because I started doing these interviews in 4 years ago. I interviewed about 20 women, all over 50. And I knew that I didn't want the show to just be about activism, but I knew it had to include activism because I had been searching for some sort of blueprint that was not beyond Stonewall, but in addition to Stonewall. Because I had began to notice that, you know, when you're part of a marginalized community, it's like, at least in this country, each one of our groups is given like one or two people and one or two events to reference, right? And the story, like what the single story, right? And I just was like, and then there was a period of time where I kept saying, you know, what we all say, we've always existed, right? We say this, and it's really like healing to say that, but I could only put two faces to it. And I was like, I need to say it and feel and hear the voices of more than 2 or 3 people. And now I say it, and I think of Laura and Silvana, and I think of you, and I think of Ada. I can name the people, and I can name the events. And so what was really interesting was hearing about some of the activism that took place before Stonewall, to hear about groups like GLUE and Laura in Los Angeles that I had never heard of, very prominent in the 80s. And those women in GLUE were taking care of the Latino men who were dying from HIV and AIDS, which is so much history I couldn't put it, but that I have to understand is lineage that we also come from, right? And that lineage, when you're connected to your lineage, is very empowering. And I think that for me, I think we need to lean on the stories, the experiences, and the wisdom of those who've come before us, and to make sure that that bridge is tighter and stronger, to know that yes, we are not just inventing things, that we don't need to invent everything, that we can create another Latina lesbian retreat, right? Or queer non-binary retreats, and do it in the tradition of GLUE, right? And so there's something powerful for me in my body and my spirit when I think about what traditions that we have inherited and how we can lean on some of the efforts and the activism before, because we don't have to invent everything. That feels really, there's something in that I find very important right now, especially when, let's be honest, this is a white nationalist supremacist project. If you are, it's about, stripping us of bodily autonomy, which we have solidarity in. I mean, lesbians have need to be stepping up a lot more for trans lives, but we have solidarity. We should be having more solidarity with trans folks and non-binary folks around bodily autonomy, around cis women, around reproductive autonomy. I mean, we need to be showing up and making these connections. And so it's scary. It's a really unsettling time. But that is why it's not a surprise. I'm not the only artist digging in the crates. I'm not the only artist doing project around archive. There is a reason that in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of artists have been returning to the archive to find wisdom and blueprints and the historical record. And I wanted to make sure that our voices were part of a historical record, because this project was part of a national oral history project of BIPOC elders curated by Jacqueline Woodson. And I wanted to make sure that Latina lesbians were included in that. And so this time it's really, really scary, and I certainly don't have the answers, but I know that there is power in refusal. I know that I will not obey in advance. I know that I can see what connections are happening right now, because as much as we need to lean on the playbooks of liberation, it's also the same book of oppression. It's the same plays that they're calling to try to divide us and conquer us in that way. So from Puerto Rico to Palestine, we got to get free together. We have to get free together. And to last point, Ada passed away. Ada was the oldest person at 89 years. You heard it. She passed away 2 months before the show. First was in Philly. And I remember going to her archives. Her friends who had in control of her estate gave me some of her clothes, gave me her books. Rare bilingual books of, just incredible poets. She was a voracious reader. And then I found a box of pins. And the protest pins from all the marches she went through. And you know what they said? They didn't just say lesbian rights and gay rights. They said anti-Vietnam. They said no to the Vietnam War. It said, no to fascism, no to McCarthyism. Ada was intersectional before that was a term that she had access to or that was invented. And so we need to remember that.
Thank you for saying that. It is very important that we see the full self of ourselves. And I think in this moment, especially, and some of you know, I lived under fascism. I was in prison and tortured under fascism, and I'm here. So that's the lesson. When we look, we're all being attacked, if not directly, very, very close to directly, and more than likely, all of us directly will be attacked. It's very likely. We may be able to stave it off. But everything that's happening, the dismantling of all the legal recourses, the violation of all the human rights, civil rights, all of that is exactly what happened in Argentina before the military took over. It's what happened in Chile before the coup there. It's what happened in Guatemala in 1954 before the coup took place. This country has orchestrated all those coups. So let's be real about where we are here and the surprise that people have about how our rights are being violated and so on. Unfortunately, slavery already proved that that's what they're going to do. The genocide of our native folks already has proven that. The attacks that our LGBT community has undergone. And to your point about what Ada was involved in, our most vulnerable populations are our immigrant populations, our trans populations, and everyone is in there. I mean, but when immigrants get attacked, those people that are not immigrants have to be the first line of defense. And that line of defense, can be physical, and you can't dictate how people do, but it can be physical, literally, put yourself in front. But it can also be a financial defense, a legal defense, a phone call defense, a petition defense. So putting no judgment at this point on how everyone can act. And the same thing, our trans folks, those non-trans folks, we have to be, again, the first line of defense.
Yes.
And yes, absolutely. And I'll just leave this in terms of my own experience, where I was in prison in Argentina, farm worker, activist, who could give a hoot. And Henry Kissinger, who was a war criminal, and when he was still Secretary of State, had to tell the embassy of the U.S. in Argentina, said, we have to, I had spent 16 months in prison already, but he said, you have to get her out of there. Not because he cared about me, but because the campaign that was formed in my defense had grown to such a point that they had to pay attention to it. They said, you have to get her out of there because it's calling too much attention to what is happening. So in a weird kind of a way, I was released because of that. But the only way that he could have cared and known about this, because he knew about this case, is because my farm worker parents with no money, my college friends from Mecha with no money, waged a campaign where they got many people to send a letter, sign a petition, buy a raffle ticket for $2, and all those individual acts added up to a collective force that they could not ignore. It is just one small, it's a slice of an example, but it's real. It's real. It's real. I'm here because of that. I was saved because of that. And so I'm encouraging all of us to take whatever action you can, whatever individual act you can, and then get together with the people that are doing the same individual acts and do things. Some people have been, I've heard criticisms like, well, I don't know why the people, what good is going to be to go protest against Tesla, or how the park rangers now are protesting, and this is not even that fully coordinated and so on. I believe that we will come to the point where we don't have a strategy. We don't have a strategy. I'm talking our side. We don't have a strategy, but it's forming. It's forming. And right now, whatever people are doing, do it. Just do it. Just go out and do it. So that's a commercial, right? Just do it. Yeah. Wasn't that a commercial? A Nike commercial? Just do it. But anyway, let me just say, I'm just so encouraged and inspired, seriously, and moved, you know, by your deep vision and your deep love, you know, for us, for your community, for your family, you know, for the women that you interviewed. And this is what needs to happen, and you are setting a great example to bring this kind of, you know, together. So I feel like we're in it now.
We are. You're not going to get rid of me now.
Yeah,
See, this is what happens.
We're in it now. So,
but we owe so much to you, and that's hopefully my hope is that this show is just flowers. It's just as many flowers as I could try to imagine in my mind to honor and appreciate and recognize the sacrifices that people like you have made. And so it means a lot that you came here and you didn't have to come here. It means a lot that it resonated with you because sometimes it doesn't land or your intentions don't come across. And so as I'm learning the show, it's really important to me to be in conversation with those who have come before. And the show is not the end. The show is the beginning, and the invitation is for other people to interview their elders and their movement elders and people in their communities, and then to build actual relationships with them, to go to lunch with them, which next time I'm gonna get your phone number, so we're gonna go to lunch together. That's what it's about, is relationships, because those relationships make our movement stronger and they make us stronger.
Well, really well done, really well done. Yossi, thank you for inviting me.
Gracias, Yossi.
And giving me the opportunity to be here, to be with Denise, to be in community and in conversation. And this is how we become stronger, doing exactly this kind of thing. Yeah. So thank you.
Give it up for Olga. Gracias, mi amor. Gracias por todo.